Hello and welcome. I'm John Reed, facilitator of this podcast. You are listening to Before You Cross That Bridge, a podcast series dedicated to helping young people find a good job and even a career on Cape Cod. We're excited to have two very special guests, two women who are doing much to drive the Cape Cod economy. Wendy Northcross, CEO of the Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce, and Neila, Business Services Coordinator with Career Opportunities. Thank you both so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. Wendy Northcross, we are constantly hearing about the skills gap. Now, as the CEO of the Cape Cod Chamber, we would suspect that you're hearing many complaints and concerns from your members regarding this problem. What does that term skills gap mean in relation to the Cape and Islands?
Well, it's a pretty general term. It's a very broad statement that I think points to employers' frustration to find just the right person with just the right talent or just the right soft skills or hard skills to fill their particular position. All across the country, businesses are challenged with this. But for here on Cape Cod, we find that more and more people are looking for very specific talent, especially as it relates to dealing with people, problem solving, and working in a very technically rich environment. In other words, there's a lot of technology now that people have to know how to drive it and how to interpret it.
Well, that's fascinating because when people bandy that other term around, the STEM, if you will, my perception of that is hard skills all the way, technical, brass tacks, engineering, math, etc. And yet you've actually taken this holistic approach because you're talking about the all-important people skills.
Right. And I think that, the technical skills are real, and they're needed, and technology is rapidly changing. I mean, it's multiplying at a much faster rate in terms of the new things that are invented or the new platforms that have to be understood. Everything from Snapchat to Periscope, which were last year's darlings in social media, they're going to be replaced by the next thing this year. And some of this is moving so fast, it's really hard to keep up. But really and truly, what we're hearing from people are some of those soft skills. Do they have empathy for other people? Do they work well in a team setting? Do they take supervision easily or not? The issue of literacy is really important. People, traditionally that's been understood to be, can you read and write? But really the concept of literacy now is becoming, do you have an expanded use to use language, different languages? We're a global economy now. Are you good with numbers? Can you interpret images? Can you interpret the expression on someone's face? So some of these things are really learned skills, and some of it all of it is desperately sought after by employers. So I think that the good news is you can learn a lot in school, and the better news is sometimes you can learn these from your employer.
Well, you can also learn some of these grammatical and social skills, if you don't mind my saying this, by just putting down the cell phone once in a while and actually communicating and listening face-to-face, which is becoming a lost art. I can't believe how many people spell thanks as THX. So I think we're up against that big time as well.
Right. When you hear things like sometimes people can't make change at the cash register unless it's all spelled out for them on the digital cash register. They can't build back, the change from $5 if it's $3.33, So those seem simple on the face of it, but I'm hearing that that's a skill that's lacking. Now, I myself am very dependent on a calculator, so I can go to the calculator first thing, but those skill sets seem to be a common complaint. And then other simple things like knowing that you need to show up at work on time, know how to be properly dressed, respect for authority in terms of who's your boss, and how you work with other people. All of that stuff's very, very important, and sometimes gets overlooked when you're in, like you said, when you're in STEM. You might be learning how to build a rocket ship, but are you being able to do it correctly in a team setting?
Well, those are fantastic points, and considering that there are so many skills out there that can be lucrative for a young person who wants to remain here on the Cape, they may want to consider getting trained in those particular skills so they can find a better job. So one final question, if there's a program in place to help defray the cost to the employer of training a qualified candidate in a job, the skill he or she is lacking, do you think your members would be receptive to providing that kind of training on the job?
Oh, definitely. And I think that's part of Neila's job, is to make sure that employers know what other programs are out there that can supplement their own professional development budgets. So, most employers will gladly take the time and the money and the energy to make sure that their staff, their employees, get all the tools that they need, and that includes some of this training. Yes, I think that they would, and I think that there's all kinds of opportunities to find programs that are affordable and that work on a time schedule for someone that maybe is juggling school and work and family commitments. It's doable.
Right. Well, now let's go to you, Neila. Does Career Opportunities offer any programs that will help job candidates learn that special one skill that could make the difference between them getting the job or not getting the job?
Well, we are definitely a host of wonderful opportunities for training for young people, regardless of where they are in terms of academically or in terms of their work experiences. So let me quickly, by example, talk first about getting young people their high school diploma via HiSET, which is the former GED.
Right.
This training and this schooling is available at their pace, and as we know in today's world, not having a high school diploma can be very limiting in terms of your job search at the very least. Then we have a lot of individual training programs, including computer literacy and QuickBooks, for those who want to pursue managerial business types of positions. And pretty much really anywhere you go, everybody really needs to have a familiarization with Microsoft Office and Excel and Word, etc. So we're here to help those folks get that training as well. And then in fields such as healthcare, which we know is really dominant here on the Cape, we have individual training where we can subsidize for those who are eligible their training for free as a CNA or a medical assistant. Again, all of these great opportunities are there for those who are seeking and very much want to be dedicated to creating a career path.
Well, that's certainly very impactful for the Cape because just in my daily travels, I keep passing assisted living facilities and whatnot and convalescent or nursing homes. CNAs wanted. So obviously they're crying for them, and you being on the front lines are in the best position to know that. Now, going into this on-the-job training, how do you convince an employer to take the time to train someone on the job? They would have to perceive that as being very costly, wouldn't you think?
Well, we have a couple of programs in place to assist the employer with that. Depending on the individual's experiences already in the workplace, we have internships or work experience programs where we subsidize that individual's salary, including workman's comp and payroll taxes, et cetera, for preset determined amount of time where they can actually learn the job or gain the skills that they may need, either hopefully being retained by that employer or then as they go off and pursue employment somewhere else. So the employer is very much encouraged because it's not a drain on their budget, and that can definitely be an incentive. Then we take it another step further for those candidates that we find many times would be the perfect candidate, but they are missing this one or two levels of skills that they need to enhance. And what we do is we convince the employer that if they're willing to hire this candidate, we will help reimburse the part of their salary for the time that they are needing to do training on the job, and that could range from 3 weeks to 3 months. But what this does is that this means that the employer has a partner. They have us with them developing a training program, maintaining all of the record keeping, anything that needs to be done. And what the candidate has is a very hands-on training, knowing that they're being paid while they're training, and that the employer has employed them full-time or part-time on the job to remain as a permanent member of their team.
This is precisely the type of service that everybody on Cape Cod really needs to know about, because you offer such an incredible breadth of services at career opportunities. And I know this is a cliche, but I'm just going to use it. It's a win-win. It's a win for the candidate who needs to develop certain marketable skills, and it's a win for the employer because you're giving them an incredible incentive to invest in this person.
Absolutely, and we find that it's so beneficial to the employer because they get to train that new hire the way they want them to be, and so it's something that oftentimes, you bring on a new hire, there's some training involved regardless. What we're saying is in those cases where it be a little bit more demanding, we are willing to compensate the employer, understanding that there's some productivity that may be lost because somebody else from the team has to supervise this new hire. The employers are very, very receptive to it. And for the candidate, it's just a great way to get over that hurdle of not being, the absolute perfect fit, which, as Wendy was saying, is something really difficult to come by nowadays, not only just here on the Cape, but anywhere across the nation.
Well, another plus to this thing is that the employer gets to train the person their way, as opposed to someone who may be taking on somebody with a very comparable and very workable skill set, but they may have different work habits, they may have different ways of approaching things, and you get into this little philosophical conflict like, well, I want it done my way, and this way you've got somebody who is still just enough of a beginner to be trained the way the employer wants that person to operate. And I think that is, that's an exciting byproduct. Now, say you have somebody, we're talking about people that come to career opportunities and want to pursue a career. Now, if the job seeker finds an employer on his or her own that's willing to hire them, as long as they're willing to learn the one skill that they're lacking, should that job seeker call you to meet with the employer and forge that relationship?
Well, that would absolutely be the first step. What we need to remind everybody is Career Opportunities is funded by federal and state funds. And so what we do requires for people to become members of the Career Center to be eligible for our resources. Membership is free, both for the employer and the individual. And they go through that process. They get orientation of the many resources, the various training that we have available. And then we take it another step further, that if we find that they are in fact eligible for these internships and on-the-job training programs, we will reach out to the employer and we will explain all the benefits of it to that employer and see if we can create the synergy to make that happen, an on-the-job training situation.
Well, this is all very inspiring, and I hope that we have a lot of young people out there who are willing and ready to take on these incredible opportunities here on Cape Cod. I thank you so much, Wendy Northcross, CEO of the Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce, and Neila Neary, Business Services Coordinator with Career Opportunities. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
For everyone out there, remember, before you cross that bridge, visit Career Opportunities, the Cape's one-stop career center.